I'm going to talk about explanations. And I'm going to talk, when I talk about things, I'm always talking from a practical point of view. Okay, I'm thinking about what works best. And I think one of the problems that we do have is explanation. I think we have a big problem with explanations across all over English. And I think if we look at how we even mark explanations, when you look at seeing how you mark an explanation, it's interesting. Because when you're looking at writing in general, we're going, right, well, you need to improve your spelling, you need to improve your accuracy. But then when we get to explanation, we get a little bit wishy-washy. And what we end up doing is go, well, you need to explain a bit more. You need to do more explaining. And so what I'm going to take you through is some approaches that we've used, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of a strange world of explanations. So you can see the thing, strange things. Okay, so at the moment, a lot of us, when we're marking, okay, it can be a little bit of a daunting world that actually sometimes we feel like we're 11 and we're kind of trying to use telekinesis and trying to work out what a student is actually saying. And it becomes quite hard, and you're there trying to work it out. And what do they actually mean? And a little bit of blood is coming out of your nose as you're trying to work out what are they trying to say. And this is something that I've been faced with in previous jobs, because I've not always been an English teacher. I worked in industry, and I had to deal with a lot of rubbish and a lot of terminology. Okay, and some of this stuff is this. All right, we've got a lot of words that don't actually help and shape explanations. They're just gobbledygook, and they're garbage. And the problem is that we get a lot of students writing gobbledygook like this, with the hope that it sounds intelligent. And so we end up really struggling with our brains to try and work out what are they actually meaning. Now, I'm going to share with you, okay, that I've got a little bit of beef with Mark Roberts. Okay, if you know Mark Roberts on Twitter, well, you'll be in part of this joke if you want to. If you want to say things about it on Twitter, you can do. Okay, that I've got beef with Mark Roberts. Is that because I think the problem is that we all know that student who is obsessed with a term. And whatever they do, they've got to get it in there. The word juxtaposition, no matter what they're writing, they will put juxtaposition in them, or antithesis. They love antithesis, so every single paragraph will have the mention antithesis, because that's the word that they got. And so what we've got at the moment is we've got students who are chucking words at us. Now, I think Alex Quigley has done fantastic work about highlighting about vocabulary, and that we've got issues with vocabulary because we've got word poor students. The problem is that, same with everything, okay, too much of something is a bad thing. So what we're getting is a lot of students chucking words at teachers with the hope that it sounds clever. And so we're getting a lot of these words with the hope that students feel that they're sounding clever. And if they have these few words, and the problem is, because we're in an exam system, we're trying to build up and try and improve students, is that often what happens is that we go, here's some more words, guys. Try and get these words into this paragraph. Come on, let's have some more words. This word sounds good. And we're trying to find sexy words to make their writing sound sexy, so the examiner sees it and go, way, that's really clever. But actually, the student probably doesn't understand the concept. And where my beef with Mark Roberts is, and he made a very sensible point, and his sensible point was it's the concepts and the ideas. But the problem is that students don't tend to see the concepts and the ideas behind the technique. What they hear is they hear a nice sounding, sexy word that makes their writing sound clever and effective. So the problem is that words don't explain things. So we're getting students who are bombarding words into their writing with the hope that it sounds like it's sophisticated and clever. And often it isn't. And so what we're getting is an upside-down world, where we've got these students who've got this great vocabulary, and it's improving, it's getting great, but the problem is they're not explaining things. And that, for us, is fundamentally the thing that we should be doing in our job, talking about explaining things, and explaining things better. There we go. I don't know if anyone know about this, plain English. Okay, I had a fantastic teacher when I was younger, and there was best lessons ever, and it sounds absolutely dull and boring when I think about it, but he taught me about plain English and the plain English campaign. And the plain English campaign was very, very, very simple. It was about making things clear and making expression clear and getting rid of gobbledygook. Okay, and it's still existing there, and there's loads of stuff there, gobbledygook, and it's a great little resource for things. But their principle was about communication and making ideas clear. And the problem is, what confusing the matter is with some lovely, tier 2 and tier 3 words that we're adding to these sentences, but what they're doing is they're creating gobbledygook. And so we're expecting an examiner to find something clever in this gobbledygook. So we've got to help students find that balance with things. Because when you look at academic writing isn't full of gobbledygook. What we've kind of created is this Frankenstein monster of what we think academic writing is. If you have this word, if you have an alternative interpretation, if you mention juxtaposition, that is a clever thing. That will take you there. If you mention capitalism, that will there. And actually, we're moving away from explaining things. And this is the problems that we have with a lot of our students. This is when talking to students, okay, this is what they tend to do. They repeat the same idea again and again. They tend to write very, very short explanations and then go on to a different idea. They tend to list ideas and don't really explain. They tend to struggle to put their ideas down, so they go for those clever words because they know that that word sounds clever and not actually thought about the thinking behind it. They tend to waffle and go for the topic too easily. So that's what students tend to do, and we see that day in, day out. We see that all the time. So we were trying to explain to our students, what is it? What is the problem with our grade 4 students? Well, grade 4 students, what they tend to do is they tend to list lots of ideas. That's what they tend to do. They're very good, they've got loads of ideas. But when you look at the more sophisticated writers, when you look at the grade 7s and the grade 8s and 9s, and when you get those scripts back, when you look at them, is they're not talking about hundreds of ideas. They're not explaining every single thing about the text. What they tend to do is they have an idea, they explain it, they develop it, and then they link it to something else. So quite simplistic when we looked at those papers themselves.